Hey, it's me, MLB. Here is Chance Ball Chapter 60, and this one is titled, Dabi is a Good Man. And then, as if by magic or the powers of fanfiction, Dabi walked in. You looked past Fueji and saw Dabi, and then panicked immediately. Oh no, this is not good timing at all, you screamed internally. Fueji saw the look on your face and turned around, freezing the second that he saw his teammate. Dabi stopped as well, and there was a heavy standoff between the two. Don't say anything stupid, don't say anything stupid, you begged internally to Fueji. And thankfully, by some stroke of luck, or again the powers of fanfiction, he didn't say anything this time, but just put his head down and walked out the door past Dabi. What are you doing here? You asked Dabi. You're supposed to be on the team, practicing. I left, he said. I told you I was going to. Babe, you can't, I just spoke with Fueji. Yeah, I saw that. What the hell's he doing here? Can you just breathe for a second and let me speak? You snapped. I get that you worked up, but I have information for you. Okay, what? He asked gruffly, walking over and reaching across the counter to pull you forward so he could kiss you. You caved and let him have a quick tongue kiss, and then told him about what Fueji had said. Doesn't change that he's a dick, Dabi replied. I don't care what his reasons are. I don't like him. I don't like working around him, so I left. I'm not putting up with that bull crap. Yeah, well, he wasn't there today because he didn't want to annoy you, you replied. Again, I don't give a flying duck, Dabi said. You can go home now. Did you need me to pick you up tonight? Yeah, on closing, if you could, he said with a soft smile. I'm sorry you quit. I'm not, he replied, turning and leaving the store. You sighed as you watched him go, and then got to work while pondering over the afternoon's happenings. Dabi got home and had a shower, angrily scrubbing his hair under the flow of water while he thought about what had happened with the coach at the centre. As much as he didn't want to admit it, he was super bummed that he wasn't going to be able to play professionally, and he'd been looking forward to his first game that was coming up soon. Things just aren't going my way at the moment, he thought with a scowl on his face as he washed the rest of himself and then got out and slung a towel around his waist, water still dripping from his downward spikes of hair and racing down his steaming physique. As he walked out into the bedroom, he heard his phone ding, alerting him to the fact that he had missed a call, so curiously he walked over and looked at it. It was a missed call from his coach, as well as a message asking Dabi to call him back when he got a chance. Curiously, he rang the coach back and pressed the phone to his ear. When the coach picked up, Dabi greeted him and waited to hear why he had received a call. Listen, the coach said. I don't know what's going on between you and Fueji, but he just came in here and told me that if you agreed to come back onto the team, then he would quit. He said the team needs you, and if it means he has to go, then so be it. So, what? Dabi asked. I'm asking if you'll reconsider coming back into the team if he leaves, the coach asked. You're a good player, and you work well with everyone. Would you consider it? Dabi thought for a moment, all of your words flashing through his mind in a hot minute, and he groaned and pinched the bridge of his nose as he warred with his options. Okay, you know what? Put him back on, but don't drop Fueji. Give us a week, and I'll talk to you again at the end of the week, he said. Yeah, okay, the coach replied. I'll tell him. Cool, see you tomorrow, Dabi said, a weight lifting from his shoulders at the thought of being back on the team. You'll be happy to hear about this, he thought with a smirk as he dried himself off and then put clothes on. He was still looking forward to seeing you in extreme happy mode. That was his favourite of your different emotional settings. It reminded him of a puppy. A few hours later, he was standing back first against his car, and when you left the store, you smiled as you approached. Then you saw the look on his face, and you gave him a dubious look. You look happy. Why do you look happy? Did you kill someone? Oh God, you didn't. He's in a ditch somewhere, isn't he? Do we need to leave the country? Are you done? Dabi teased. I haven't murdered anyone. I'm back on the team again. What? You gasped with excitement, your face glowing with delight. Seriously? What happened? How? Apparently, Fueji said to the coach that if I come back on the team, he'll leave. But I told the coach not to drop him just yet. I'll give him a week. I figure this is a good enough rap over the knuckles that he might just pull his head in and stop being a dickwad, Dabi replied, trying not to grin as you squealed and bounced around with excitement. I'm so happy, you screeched, jumping up and down on the spot. You're such a good man. You didn't make Fueji leave. I'm so proud of you for that, you gushed, hugging him around the middle. He placed a hand on your head and smirked down at you as you looked up at him lovingly. Yeah, I'm pretty amazing, Dabi said boastfully, which made you laugh with delight. Anyway, I'm just glad you're back doing what you love and that you're good at, so let's head home. I want to eat that packet of chips that's been in the cupboard staring at me since yesterday, you said, pushing off him and walking around the other side of the car. Dabi unlocked the doors and you both got in, had a quick kiss, and then headed home. Only time will tell if Dickwad decides to act right, Dabi commented on the drive home. If he still acts up, I'll tell the coach to drop him. It was his idea after all. I think he'll be okay now. He knows his ass is on the line, you replied, reaching across to put a hand on Dabi's knee. Fueji was on his best behaviour, as you suspected, but Dabi still wouldn't talk to him, and Fueji certainly didn't try and make conversation with the black-haired ace either, so the two were just at a stalemate. Time ticked on and the game was quickly approaching. You were excited to see Dabi in action, on centre stage, and booked your tickets as soon as you could. The morning of, you kissed Dabi goodbye and watched him go, then got ready and made your way to the bus stop to catch the bus in. The local stadium was a hive of activities you got off, and you quickly entered the building, locating your seat, and then sat down to watch. Because you had booked so early, you got front row seats on the balcony, and so draped yourself over the rails and called to Dabi below. "Smash 'em, ace!" You cupped your hands to your mouth to amplify your words. Dabi heard you and looked up into the stands. "Well, look, my lucky charm's here," he said loudly with a smirk up at you. "Sit tight, baby. I'll bring this game to a win, and I'll be up to get my kiss." You giggled and shook your head. He always said the same thing each game, but you loved that he called you his lucky charm. Warm-ups began, and you watched him spike perfectly each time. "Man, he's really on the ball today," you thought with pride, then looked at Fueji, who was placidly throwing a ball up by himself and receiving it. I wish those two would just talk it out. Your face fell. After a while, the opposing team entered and started to warm up as well. They looked tough, but Dabi didn't seem fazed, so you didn't let it rattle you either. The game began, and it was Blue Flames who were serving first. It was obvious that they had been practicing their plays because the first round went so smoothly it looked like the other team didn't even get a chance to put anything in play before the ball was on the court on their side. Dabi put one finger up to indicate that that was the first win, and it wasn't going to go backwards from there. Over and over, Dabi spiked beautifully. Straight shots, cross shots, any shots you wanted, he delivered. The opposing team was starting to get frustrated and upset by this, and so were getting desperate, and it was during one of these duels at the net that Dabi jumped to spike, but the guy on the other side put a hand over the net and blocked his swing, which wasn't allowed, and he got a foul for it. But something wasn't right with Dabi's hand. Concerned, you watched as Dabi held his hand out of sight of his fellow players, but kept it close to his body. Did their hands collide? Is Dabi okay? It looks like he's having trouble straightening his fingers. You couldn't call out to him to ask if he was okay, so just had to watch and see what would happen. Would Dabi sub out? You didn't think he would. The game started up again and Dabi started spiking with his other hand. He was naturally right-handed, but would sometimes opt for his left when things weren't working out like he originally planned. Yeah, he's hurt his hand, you thought, as you watched him spike another straight with his left. This change of hand of spiking was really throwing the opposing team and giving the Blue Flames a steep advantage, but that didn't take away from the fact that he had gotten injured and he hadn't said anything. A timeout was called by the other team and Blue Flames gathered around to have a debrief. During their huddle, you saw Fueji walk around to Dabi and tap him on the shoulder. The pair stepped away from the rest of the team and spoke before Dabi showed Fueji his injured hand. Fueji nodded and they spoke again, and then he gave him a small smile and they joined the rest of the team again. Over on the other side, the guy who had been fouled had seen that Dabi had switched hands and knew his reach across the net had resulted in Dabi's injury, so whispered to his teammates to gang up on Dabi. There was a debate as to whether or not that would be a good idea, but the more seasoned of the team knew that Dabi couldn't maintain the strength and stamina in his left hand to the same effect that he could with his right, and figured if they wore him down, it would put him out of the game entirely, which is what they wanted. Back to the court, both teams went at it again, and it was the opposing team's turn to serve. The server threw the ball up and took 2 running steps and then put his whole being into the serve, arching back and then flinging his body forwards to channel as much of his body's momentum into the swing, aiming the ball straight at Dabi. But before Dabi could try and receive it, Fueji jumped in and did a magnificent receive, sending it high for the setter to get under it. "On your left," Dabi called, waiting a few beats before starting his run. The blockers on the other team moved into position, 3 abreast, and jumped just as Dabi did, but all of a sudden the ball shot to the right and was given to another hitter, who easily evaded the block and put the ball down neatly in the middle of the court on the other side. Dabi sniggered at the blockers, who all gave him a death stare for tricking them, and then everything reset. Every time they tried to get Dabi, Fueji was right there messing up their plans, and so after a few very futile attempts, they switched to targeting Fueji. This threw the grey-haired player a bit, and the Blue Flames lost a few opportunities to score, but it didn't take them long to get their feet back under them again, and as the numbers on the scoreboard climbed, so too did your hopes that the Blue Flames would hold their lead and win. At one point, Fueji checked in with Dabi and asked him something, to which Dabi shook his head and showed the player his hand, which had turned purple and swollen. The look of pure rage on Fueji's face matched yours, and you cursed every single one of the opposing team players for hurting your man, but thankfully, Fueji was there to serve justice on your behalf. Like a man possessed, Fueji really stepped up to the plate, and as the final few seconds of the game played out, the opposing team once again targeted Dabi. Fueji, unable to get across the court in time to block the serve, had to watch as Dabi took the ball on an overhead receive, his face scrunching up as the ball came in contact with his badly bruised fingers. "Fueji, take it home!" Dabi shouted as he pushed the ball skywards. The grey-haired player ran forwards and squatted under the ball, getting a nice deep receive in and shouting back to his raven-haired teammate. "Yours!" he shouted. "Ace this mother trucker!" Dabi grinned and cast his eyes over the net, quickly calculating all of the options that he had. The opposing team were all on edge now, but their captain urged them to get in close, as by now it was obvious that Dabi had little to zero power left in both ends, so they ran forwards to cover the front of the court. "Screw 'em up, Dabi!" Fueji shouted as your man ran forwards and jumped up, his left hand reared back. Two of the blockers at the front paused, and then jumped, shifting across a little to block his left hand. But at the last second, Dabi rotated his body and smacked the ball with his right hand that seemed to come up out of nowhere, sending the ball neatly past the blockers and down onto the floor in an effortless win. And there ends Chapter 60. Stay tuned for Chapter 61, coming tomorrow.